Part of our predicament of being alive is that we have come from our ancestors, and the future is the time of our descendants. And we are the only link in this present moment, tying us forever to the past, the present, and the future. On this day, as we celebrate our children with our child dedication ceremony, and we consider our inheritance, I invite you now to just take a moment of silence, to consider both your ancestors and your descendants, even those who are not yet here. Let's just take a moment. I share with you a poem by Lawrence Ferlinghetti about his parents. Driving a cardboard automobile without a license at the turn of the century, my father ran into my mother on a fun ride at Coney Island, having spied each other eating in a French boarding house nearby, and having decided right there and then that she was for him entirely. He followed her into the playland of that evening, where the headlong meeting of their ephemeral flesh on wheels hurled them forever together. And now I, in the back seat of their eternity, reach out to embrace them. Isn't that sweet? Come, let us worship together.
Last Thursday, April 30, 20 years ago, I moved to the U.S. from Mexico. I have to reflect on what that means for me and for my daughter, who is 5.5, almost 6, more than anything. But with this topic of generations in mind, I couldn't avoid thinking about what brought me here today. In part, a father and a mother who brought a family of 10 from a small town to a city of many millions in Mexico. Grandmothers who chose not to get married after becoming widows with small kids. An uncle who seemed to have told stories from the past generations and just passed away at age 92 a few weeks ago. Their parents and grandparents who went through the Mexican Revolution. Looking forward, thinking about my soon-to-be 6-year-old daughter, as I mentioned, I wonder at her life, what her life will be and her possibilities and what she brings and will bring to this world, what she will achieve. Will she have children and grandchildren? Their world, a new world, their lives with joys and sorrows and happiness and meaning and universalism in Unitarianism. What brought you here, to this place? To this place in time? What did your parents do to bring you here? What did your grandparents do? And their parents and their grandparents? What triumphs did they work for? What challenges did they overcome? What legacy or inheritance will you leave to your children, their grandchildren? One of the things you are leaving, hopefully, is the freedom of thought and the encouragement to change this world for a better one with our religion support, Unitarian Universalism. I'm going to light this chalice with the words from Odette Fulbright-Fulson. This light we kindle is set in the lamp of our history. We inherit this free faith from the brave and gentle, fierce and outspoken. Fierce and outspoken hearts and minds that have come before us. Let us be worthy inheritors of this faith and through our good works pass it bodily to a new generation. Our reading today is a poem by Kiyama Rama. It is that time and that place. Now is the time to call on the memories of the ancestors who thought they could not walk another step toward freedom. And yet they did. It is that time and place to call on the memories of the ancestors who, when the darkness of their lives threatened to take away the hope and light, reached a little deeper and prayed yet another prayer. It is that time and place to remember those who came through the long night to witness another sunrise. It is that time and place to remember the oceans of tears shed to deliver us to this time. To remember the bent knees and bowed backs, to remember the fervent voices asking, begging, and beseeching for loved ones sold up. Time to remember their laughter and joy, though they had far less and little reason for optimism, yet they stayed on the path toward a better day. Time to hold to the steadfast hands and hearts and prayers of the ancestors that have brought us this far. Time to make them proud and show them and ourselves what we are made of. Time to show them that their prayers and sacrifices and lives were not in vain and did not go unnoticed, nor have they been forgotten. Did you not know that this day would come? Did you not know that we would have to change places? Did you not know that just as our ancestors were delivered, that you would also be delivered? Have you not seen the greatness and power of the creative energy in the universe called God, that moves and has its being through human agency? Have you not seen God in your neighbors' faces, in the homeless, in the battered woman, the trafficked child, the undocumented worker, the dispossessed? Is it that time and that place to know that it is our turn, that we must leave a legacy for our children and all the children? Is it that time and that place? We are the ones we've been waiting for. For that, let us be eternally grateful. Amen, and blessed be.
They say that my grandpa is a ghost. They say that they can hear him out in his old shop late at night. Now, I don't completely dismiss that, nor do I necessarily believe it. It is a mystery. Knowing, however, what a stubborn old sort he was, it wouldn't surprise me that he would hang on if he could. And based on the life that he led, it's no wonder he would still be fighting to survive if he could. Grandpa rode out to Colorado on a train when he was 6 months old in 1910. He came out with his mom and his brothers and sisters to join their dad and uncle who had just come out on a covered wagon. They were joining other relatives on the family homestead that was started in the late 1890s. Life was about as rough as one can possibly imagine out on the plains of eastern Colorado. They had very few possessions and lived in tiny mud and grass soddies, or huts. Eventually, they managed to scrape enough money together to build a big barn, actually a couple of big barns, and modest homes. We know where their priorities were. Grandpa was a true cowboy. Always wore boots and a cowboy hat, not for style, but for protection. He was both a farmer and a rancher, raising cattle and sheep. He and the family survived tornadoes and blizzards and droughts and the Dust Bowl and flu epidemics and prairie wildfires and rattlesnake bites, and that's just a small beginning of the list. He became a Christian and changed his life during the grief that he suffered when his 18-month-old daughter died in a farm accident. He knew tragedy and he knew joy. Grandpa played the fiddle, as the rest of his children grew, they formed a band with accordion and clarinet and fiddle, and they played at all the local barn dances. I wish I could have been there. Grandpa was quite a character. He always kept a loaded rifle on the rack in his back window of his pickup for shooting coyotes, and and such, and he also kept a loaded pistol in the glove box for shooting small critters like rattlesnakes, which he did frequently. One time we shot 7 on the way into church one Sunday. I remember that. He said it was a record, and I believed him. I must have been about 6. We had great big adventures with Grandpa, and every time we visited, but he was also sick. He had leukemia. Diseases like cancer and leukemia were very common among the ranchers, probably from the chemical exposures as they had adopted pesticides, the use of pesticides and herbicides. Every year, for many years, Grandpa would stand in a pit up to his waist, filled with DDT, as he dipped each of the sheep to keep the bugs off of them. You know, somebody must have told him it was a good thing to do. He died in 1972 when he was 62 years old and I was 10. Grandma had to sell the ranch, and all those adventures came to an end. But his legacy lives on in my bones, along with all of the other ancestors of my life. All of our ancestors passed on many wonderful and amazing gifts, and they also passed on their own personal struggles and their bigotry and their brokenness, just as we pass on all of who we are to our children. Now, I often ponder the question, as perhaps you might, of who am I? The Buddhist perspective on this is particularly helpful for me. There's not a single part of who I am that exists in isolation and separateness from anything else. We are the current compilation of life, and as it has been handed down to us by our ancestors and our environment. As the great Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh reminds us, we are here to awaken from the illusion of separateness. So who my grandfather was determined by what he inherited from his ancestors, combined with his beliefs and thoughts and actions and experiences, which he passed on to the rest of us, as did all of your ancestors and all of our ancestors. And all of that we have combined and we pass on to all of our descendants. It is easy, all too easy, for me to take this understanding a little too lightly and to just go about life as if we are separate individuals. And yet, that is the illusion that Thich Nhat Hanh speaks of. The more I ponder the question of who am I, the more I find myself agreeing with Edwin Schrödinger that no self stands alone. I say the self is not so much linked with what happened to its ancestors. It is not so much the product and merely the product of all that, but rather, in the strictest sense of the word, it is the same thing as all that. The strict, direct continuation of it. Just as the self at age 50 is the continuation of the self at age 40. Well, that's an interesting perspective. One of the realizations that has helped me to reframe how I see my relationship to my ancestors, you might find this surprising, is the new research on microbes. You might not have been expecting that. However, I've been thinking about this a lot lately, and I find the research is really compelling. In case you don't realize this already, our bodies are covered in microbes that help us live. Our bodies are made up of 20 million human cells, but each of us have within us 200 million microbes of various kinds. The research is discovering that microbes affect how we think and what we eat and how we feel and even how we behave. And they are passed down, as you might imagine, through one's families and even from our pets. So again I ask, who am I? Are these 200 million microbes me? Or is it just my DNA? Or is it just my experiences? Or what is it? Who am I? So if we inherit these microbes from our parents and pass them on to our children, then in a way, we are keeping our ancestors alive by keeping their microbes alive. And I don't mean to give you willies or anything. But isn't that fascinating? This is just another way that we are the continuation. We are the continuation of our ancestors. The food they ate, the air they breathed, the animals that they were around, the dirt that they walked on, all became a part of their microbes, and in turn became a part of us. In the southern part of Africa, there is the concept of Ubuntu, which means I am who I am because of who we are all together. Whether it is the migrating microbes or words and beliefs that travel like microbes, we are all intermingled. There is no I am without you are and we are. So who am I? We are. We are all connected by worldwide communication and by travel capability and by DNA and by microbes and by basic human needs and wants and ideas that we share and beliefs that we share and thoughts and all of that. More and more, we speak the same language and have common and mutual understandings, even though we may disagree on things. So this brings me to a hard truth that I know I must face, and I invite you to face it too. When we look at the world through this very big picture of being a continuation of our predecessors, in so many ways, then, from this perspective, we are the ones who have created the world as it is, and we have to take responsibility for changing it and shaping it for our future selves, known as our descendants. Now, we may not have created the earthquake that happened in the Himalayas, but we, through our ancestors, helped to create the poor quality of life in that part of the world. We are all connected. And we are part of the response that is happening now and part of the healing as well. Now, I'll be honest. This thought, like I said, is difficult, and it makes me squirm, and it makes me feel like being overwhelmed, and I want to give up and just go put my head in the sand somewhere and turn on the TV and watch Downton Abbey. And isolate myself from the tragedies of the world. But my friends, we can no longer afford to do that. This isolation is just an illusion. And our descendants need us to wake up to the truth that we are responsible for one another, because none of us can be truly happy and free until all of us are truly happy and free. The Nepalese, Tibetans, and others who are now suffering the tragedy of this earthquake that has recently happened and its aftershocks have been praying for awakening and enlightenment for all sentient beings, including you and me, for many hundreds of years. I would say at least 800 years. It is likely that it's like they have been sending out their positive spiritual microbes to all of us. Metaphorically. Through their prayers. They have been praying for our healing, praying for our awakening, praying for us to realize that we are not separate, but that we are truly connected and we are one. That awakening is beginning to happen. But now it is our turn to pray for them, for they are the ones who are truly in need. The prayer that they have been saying for all of us is Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. And it is repeated over and over and over, for it is a mantra. You can say it fast and you can say it slow, you can sing it, you can dance it, you can repeat it using hand drums, spinning something, prayer flags. You've probably seen prayer flags. They are repeating the prayer, Om Mani Padme Hum. Those suffering from this earthquake need our prayers now, and I invite you to join with me in the practice of sending prayers of healing and well-being back to those who have given this prayer to us so freely for centuries. I'm going to pray my prayer through my Nepalese flute that was made in Nepal by a master flute maker. And as I do, I invite you to quietly, at whatever speed you want, repeat that mantra, sending prayers to those who need it the most right now. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. May all beings be filled with peace. May all beings be filled with love. May all beings experience healing. May all beings become enlightened. My daughter and her family have been living with us for these past couple of weeks, and as they prepare to make a big move to California, which I am not particularly happy about, I have to say, I've greatly enjoyed our time together, and I have great sadness about their move, even though it's a great opportunity for all of them. Clearly, my daughter, it's been a while since she's lived with me, and now I can see how she is her own person now, with her own life to lead, and it is no longer, I have to remind myself, my job to tell her what to do. My influence comes only as she invites it. Yes, she is who she is because we all are who we are. But we are not the same, it is true. We are deeply connected, and yet we too are individuals. And now it is my hopes, all of my hopes and my dreams and my prayers that go with her and with her family. Somewhere along the line, the tables turned. Things got switched. I'm moving into the realm of into the realm of ancestor. Don't give up on me yet. As you may know, I'm a big fan of science fiction, especially shows like Star Trek and Doctor Who and such. They almost always paint such a picture of a future that is getting better. And this was a reflection of the common scientific belief for the past few centuries. since the Enlightenment, really. Human evolution and development was inevitably bringing a better life to all. But now, we are seeing the evidence that this is not true. Or, to make this true, we must overcome some very dark forces that have poisoned the environment and the virtuous balance of power. We have reached a point where there is no question that the future of the planet is at risk. Oh, I'm making myself squirm like crazy today. I just hate this, but it's the truth, and I know we all know it. No one feels the pressure of that more than my daughter's generation, the millennials. Many of us who are boomers and Gen Xers, I'm right on the cusp there, so I have to mention y'all, we're handed a world that seems to have endless possibilities and hope, but that isn't what the millennials are seeing on their horizon. The tragic deaths, however, of young black men at the hands of police have been happening for a very long time. But finally, people are demanding justice, and that gives me hope. The riots and the destruction are mindless and also tragic, but there is a movement away from racism and towards justice that is happening in this country that we have needed for a long time. There is unfinished work left to do from the civil rights movement, and the civil rights movement was unfinished work from the Civil War. According to psychologist Carl Jung, we each take on the unfinished business of our parents. So what are we giving to our millennials? We inherit those incomplete and unhealed parts of our ancestors, and it becomes our work to do. And as we pass on our issues to our grandchildren, it becomes their work to do. We each have our own lifetime to affect what we are made of, to change the proverbial microbes that we pass on. So have we been holding on to some tragic story, shaping our entire identity around this story of being mistreated, of what went wrong in our lives, our past brokenness that we can't let go of? And we pass that on like a virus, like an illness. Or are we passing on the wisdom that we have acquired from overcoming those difficulties, like passing on protective microbes that bring health and healing? This is what each and every one of us is tasked to do. We each find ourselves right smack in the middle of this present moment. Our lives a link between our ancestors and our descendants. And when we do the work of turning all that pain and suffering in our lives and in others' lives into our greatest teachers and live into our best selves, our greatest wholeness, we heal the brokenness of our ancestors, of what they have given us. They have given us great blessings and great challenges both. And we pass on the well-being, the virtues, the goodness that we have managed to create, the good karma, one might say, on to our descendants. By healing ourselves, we heal the past, the present, and the future, which we are inextricably linked. As Unitarian Universalists, our ancestors have given us the values that all people are worthy and we are one. We have the legacy of love. Love is the most powerful force and healing force in the world. And justice is what love looks like in public. We are not, nor have we ever been, people who put our heads in the sand. Our ancestors managed to see past the illusion of separation, and they call on us to do the same. They have paved the way for us. They have given us the gift of this understanding. And most importantly, we have to give it on to our descendants to save the world for them. I am who I am because you are who you are. Therefore, we are called to serve the world by working for it, for justice and for peace and for all those around us. So share your goodness. This place is full of goodness. We saw that earlier this morning with the child dedication. Share your goodness for whatever causes that you feel called to serve. You can't possibly know the impact that you are going to have on the future. You never know whose lives you will touch well into the future. So I share with you in closing this Bodhisattva prayer for humanity. And this is a prayer that is said by the Dalai Lama every morning. It was created by Shantideva in 700 AD. May I be a guard for those who need protection, a guide for those on the path, a boat, a raft, a bridge for those who wish to cross the flood. May I be a lamp in the darkness, a resting place for the weary, a healing medicine for all who are sick, a vase of plenty, a tree of miracles. And for the boundless multitudes of living beings, may I bring sustenance and awakening, enduring like the earth and the sky until all beings are freed from sorrow and all are awakened. May it be so, my friends. May we make it so. Amen.